What's up guys, it's Victor, and in this video I'm going to show you the easiest way that you can use Windows on an iPad anywhere with internet connection using the remote desktop app for iPad. First, I want to demonstrate how well this works and a few tips and tricks to how you might want to use this particular setup. Then, I'll show you how you can get this set up for yourself step by step. Lastly, I want to talk to you guys about how and why I even started using this setup. So with that, let's begin. So here's what I'm using right now. I have a ThinkPad E580 running Windows 10 Pro, and that's actually important because only the professional level of Windows and above allows you to actually remote into the PC. That means that if you're using a Windows Home license, then this will not work. I'm also using an iPad 6th generation in order to remote into my PC. Now, you might already be wondering,
Victor, why are you remoting into your laptop when it's already portable?
And that's for the end of this video, so let's continue. For the best results, you're going to want to use an Ethernet connection in order to remote into your PC. Using Wi-Fi, especially in public areas, could result in you experiencing lag. That also means for your PC sitting at home too. If you can have both devices connected to LAN at the same time, then the less likely you'll experience any lag, and it'll literally feel like you've turned your iPad into a Windows machine. But if you can't find any LAN connections anywhere for your iPad, then using Wi-Fi to connect to your PC that is connected to LAN should be just fine. Now, for my iPad, I bought a Lightning Hub. This hub includes an Ethernet port, a USB port, and a Lightning port. If you're using an iPad with USB-C ports, then you're going to want to buy a USB-C hub, preferably one that comes with the same ports that I have right here. The reason why you'd want something like this is for a few reasons. As we just discussed, if you can connect your iPad to LAN in order to access the internet, then you won't need to worry about any lag impacting your connection to your PC. The USB connector comes in handy as it can actually be used to connect things to your iPad, such as a thumb drive. Now, connecting a thumb drive to your iPad that is connected remotely to your PC will not be able to connect that thumb drive to your PC at home. But one way you can get around this is by using a cloud drive service such as OneDrive, Dropbox, or Google Drive. If someone hands you a thumb drive with files that you need to access on your PC, then what I would do is connect the thumb drive to my iPad using the hub connected to it. I then open the Files app on my iPad. From here, I can transfer these files to one of the cloud drive services, and when I do so, then those files will be made available on my PC, where I am also logged into those same cloud drive services. The last thing made available to me on the hub is an additional Lightning port. You would want something like this because this allows you to continue to charge your iPad while the port is occupied with the hub. Using a setup like this consumes a lot of power from your iPad. I found that with my screen at peak brightness, using my peripherals through Bluetooth and using Bluetooth headphones, my iPad will last anywhere between 3 to 4 hours of consistent usage. So definitely have an extra port and use that fast charging brick to keep your iPad charged the whole way through. So as you can see here, using remote desktop, I have full control over my PC wirelessly. I can use just about any peripherals and it'll switch them over seamlessly to the remote PC. That's even including the mouse. The mouse you use for the iPad is a little circle that is meant to act like a fingerprint, but here it'll convert it to the regular mouse on your PC as you would expect. Funny thing is, it never used to be this way. There used to be just a few mice out there that would work for this kind of setup, and I have one of them right here called the Swiftpoint GT. But thanks to the developers over at Microsoft, they have now enabled all mice to be used within this iPad app and give you that same functionality as though it were connected to an actual PC. Even this Magic Trackpad and Apple Pencil. Except with the pencil, you can't write or draw with it inside of Windows. That would be cutting it really close to turning this thing into a Surface. Now, the only thing you can't change in settings is of course the resolution settings, as it is using the default settings best for the iPad that you're using. Now, this may be a problem for some people, as I've noticed in some programs, the windows and the text can appear very tiny, especially if you're using a small iPad. A remote desktop does come with a few tools though to help you with this. On the top, you'll notice a little menu bar. The plus sign allows you to zoom into any part of the screen that may seem too hard to see. The keyboard button will of course bring up some on-screen keys that you may need to use if you don't have access to a physical keyboard. This will also allow you to do certain things like Control-Alt-Delete when certain programs just start acting funny. You can also access even more keys by pressing the dual arrows, and then lastly, you can go back to the remote desktop's home screen if you ever want to connect to another PC that you have set up within the app. I think it's important to mention that you don't have to use a keyboard and mouse with your iPad. You can still control your PC entirely with just the iPad itself, although I wouldn't recommend it. Using touch can be a bit finicky, as you have to be as precise as possible when interacting with your PC through the remote desktop app. That means you may find yourself using the zoom button often in order to get those hard to touch clicks. But gestures are just as you'd expect. You can click with just one tap, and right click by tapping and holding your finger there for a second, and lastly scroll around by just swiping your finger. I do want to quickly mention that anything I could do on my iPad, I'll do it on my iPad. I only use the remote desktop app for certain things that an iPad still can't do. One of those things being to go to a flash site that isn't compatible on iPad. For that, I'll use the remote desktop app. I also use my remote desktop to get access to my virtual machines on my PC. You may want to use this iPad to also get access to apps and programs that you don't have access to on your iPad. One of those popular apps probably being something like Microsoft Access. I'm not sure why they haven't made an app for this on iPad or iPhone, but for right now, this might be a sufficient workaround. Now, before we get into how to get this all set up for yourself, I do want to tell you about one more helpful tip, and that's liking this video. But seriously though, after you've liked my video, I want to tell you about how you can print from the remote desktop app to another printer that you're around. So you may have a document that exists on your PC, but not on your iPad. Once again, I would use the cloud drive services tip I explained earlier in this video to transfer the file over from your PC into your iPad. Once you have done so, if there is a network attached printer that you can print wirelessly to, then you should be able to easily find it on the network, if you are given access to it, of course. Some printers don't allow you to print off of Wi-Fi, but you can print from them using a LAN connection. If something like this is required, then you will need to download the associated app for the printer. So for example, if there's an HP printer that is attached to the network, then you would want to download the HP Smart app. This app can search for and find printers along a network. You can then print the document that exists in one of the cloud drives to be able to get a hard copy of that document. Now, with all of that out of the way, let me show you how you can get remote desktop set up on your iPad. Now first, you're going to need several things, so get ready to write these down. First, you're going to need your public IP address. To get this, all you need to do is visit the website www.whatismyipaddress.com while you're connected to your home network. It'll tell you exactly what your IP address is, so you'll need to write this down. Then you need your private IP address and your default gateway address. To get these on your Windows PC, go to search and type CMD and press enter. This should open a command prompt where all you need to do is type ipconfig and press enter. Here it is going to list the IP addresses of all of your current network interfaces. It is important that you find the one that you will keep your PC connected to while you remotely connect to it. For example, since my PC is connected through the Ethernet port, then I'll copy down the information found within the Ethernet interface settings. But if you're connecting your PC to Wi-Fi, then make sure you get the Wi-Fi internet settings copied. Once you have everything written down, you now have everything you need to set up remote desktop. The first thing you need to do, however, is configure a few things on your current router. You need to reserve the IP address that your PC is currently using. Then you need to set up port forwarding for the remote desktop port, which is 3389 using TCP. Sadly, because not all of us here have the same router, I can't possibly go over this with you as the steps will vary greatly between each different router manufacturer. Some routers make this easy by allowing you to download an app on your phone that gives you access to all of your router settings, like the Google Wi-Fi that I have. But if you say use the router you're renting from your ISP, which I don't see why you would, then you'll likely need to connect it directly to one of the LAN ports in order to manage it. All of the login and access information should be printed and stuck on the router itself. My best advice is for you to Google how to do these things that is specific to the router that you're using and follow the steps that they give you. You may also contact your ISP as well, and they should be able to help. However, I have seen some ISP routers become so basic that it doesn't even give you some of these management settings. So be sure to check and see if it's even possible. Once you have all of that done, we can now configure the remote management settings on your PC. You will need to make sure that the remote desktop settings are turned on by going into your PC settings, then click System, scroll down to Remote Desktop and switch it on. Once you've done so, we need to set your PC's IP address as a static IP address. This is so that your PC's IP address doesn't change, as it will do eventually if you allow the computer to configure the IP address automatically. To configure a static IP address on your PC, go to your network settings by right-clicking your network icon found on the bottom left corner. Click Open Network and Internet Settings, and then in the pop-up window, scroll down to Change Your Network Settings, and click Change Adapter Options. Here, you'll see a list of your network interfaces. You need to right-click on the interface that you copied the settings for previously, and click Properties. So for example, I'm using the Ethernet interface, so I'll right-click that one. You'll notice that I have a ton of different interfaces, and that's just because I've downloaded and used different virtual machine softwares, so you can ignore all of them. Once in here, you'll click Internet Protocol version 4, TCP/IPv4 from within the list and click Properties. Now we just need to click Use the following IP address and start typing in the settings that you copied previously. The subnet mask will automatically populate itself when you tab over to the next box. Just be sure that everything you fill into these boxes is correct. You'll notice here that I also have my DNS settings set manually. I have a personal preference for which DNS I use, but that's not very important in this case, so you can leave those settings alone. Once that's set, hit OK for all the boxes that you've opened, and now your PC is ready for remote access. Now keep in mind, these settings are only for when you're remoting into your PC. So if you're done remoting into your PC and you want to use your PC regularly, like on a regular Wi-Fi somewhere, like at a Starbucks or something, then you're going to need to go back and you're going to need to change the settings back to automatic. Finally, we pick up the iPad and set up the remote desktop app found in the App Store. You'll tap the plus sign and then add PC. In the first box is where you place your public IP address. We're using a public IP address because this IP address will enable you to remotely access this PC away from your home and not just inside your home. In the second box, you can do one of two ways. You can leave it checkmarked for Ask When Required, and that will prompt you to enter the password for your login on the PC. I prefer to use my Microsoft account that is also signed into that user account, so I would tap Add User Account and fill in my email and password for the Microsoft account that I'm using there. When you set up your PC to be able to remote access, the account that you're logged into on there will be enabled by default and have access. And that's pretty much it. You don't need to bother with any of the other settings besides the ones found at the very bottom. You'll see that the app allows you to choose if you want to share certain hardware with the PC, like your iPad's cameras, microphones, clipboard, and storage. However, I haven't managed to find a way to give it access to the iPad storage or rummage through any of the files found within the iPad internally, but it does say it's possible. I would recommend that you do so for better ease of use. And also make sure that sound plays out of the iPad speakers instead of the PC. You'll just hit save after that, and then you tap on the tile you just created and it should begin remoting into your PC. Upon first connection, it may ask you to verify your username and password, settings for the PC. You'll enter that in and you should be good to go. If your remote was successful, then that's it. If not, then check to make sure that you copied all of your IP address settings correctly and that you chose the correct interface. But before you click off this video, let me just give you some other quick tips to help your remoting experience go much smoother. If you're ever out and about and need to remote into your PC at any time, then it's best to change some of your battery settings on your PC before heading out. You never want your PC to go to sleep if you plan on using it abroad. Yes, I know, Windows has a wake on LAN setting that you can use to send a magic packet in order to wake the system. But I found that this doesn't work very reliably, maybe like 30% of the time from outside your home network. And I'd rather be sure that I'm guaranteed access instead of the off chance that my PC will never wake up no matter how many times I try to ping it. So make sure that your PC is always connected to power and that it never goes to sleep. I would even go as far as to disable sleep when the lid is closed so that others don't accidentally close your PC and lock you out of being able to remotely access it. Trust me, all of these things have happened to me, especially when I needed my PC the most. So just to be safe, make sure your PC is on all the time. And then when you get home, you can turn it off when you don't plan to use it. Alright, so if you made it with me up to this point, then awesome. I'm glad you've been able to keep up with me. Now, let me just go and tell you why I even started using this remote desktop setup in the first place. I attended this college to get my associates in information security systems, or IT. As part of our required materials, we were to buy these Lenovo laptops that the school provided. Me being an Apple guy and already owning a MacBook, I did not want to buy this laptop, which I thought was overpriced. For a 15-inch laptop that doesn't even come with a dedicated graphics card for an SSD, they charged us over. I would have much rather have spent that money on a brand new MacBook Pro. Yes, it would have been more expensive, but it also would have been more worth it in my eyes. The CPU in this laptop is so bad, and even doing simple tasks like web browsing causes the fans to spin super loud. The battery life on this thing is also really bad and can't even last more than 2 hours of consistent usage, whereas my 7-year-old MacBook Pro can last much longer than this 2-year-old PC. So why did I still buy this PC? Well, before the first day of class, I met with the program director and asked if it'd be okay if I just don't buy the PC and stick with my MacBook. My program director ridiculed me for even the thought that I'd ask for something like that. He was stern and told me that
IT professionals don't use MacBooks and that Macs virtually don't exist in the commercial environments, and that I needed this PC to be able to get certain coursework done.
But I fought back and said, well, I can just run boot camp on my MacBook to run Windows natively on this laptop and it will be basically the same thing. And he still refused to let me walk into class with a MacBook. So whatever, I gave in and I started taking this heavy laptop into class every day at school. I slapped on an Apple sticker onto the back of it just so that I can at least pretend that I was using a MacBook. I know, it's sad. Anyways, everything from its awful mushy keyboard and small and inefficient trackpad and dim display just made this laptop frustrating for me to use. And call it what you want, first world problems, but I enjoy using my MacBook. Now that I've graduated from the college, was my program director right? Did I really need this PC to do all the coursework?
No!
Absolutely not. I could have done everything we were doing in class on my MacBook with no problems. Granted, I did need to use Windows, but I have Parallels and I can run any virtual machine I want on my Mac. After taking and getting my A+ certification, I noticed that I really didn't need a PC to do everything, and so to stick it to my program director, I went as far as taking only my iPad to school. Not just to show him that everything that we were doing on the PC could be done on a Mac, but that it can even be done on an iPad. Yes, what you're seeing here is what I used to get through college, just an iPad. Well, not technically just an iPad. I still remoted into another PC, but you know what I mean. I could have done the same thing with my existing MacBook and remote into it from my iPad as well. However, I will admit that the third parties that allow that functionality do charge a high price or monthly subscription, while Microsoft's is free. But I still could have run Boot Camp on my MacBook and remote into it like that. Anyways, you get the picture. I hated my PC so much that it pushed me to use a basic iPad, and I don't regret it. The iPad is a super slim and portable workstation that is so versatile that it can get a lot done and be very fun while remaining productive. I'm actually going to be coming out with a new video soon about how you can use your iPad for various different circumstances, so be sure to be subscribed for that. However, do I regret buying this PC? Not really. To give credit where credit is due, I did need this laptop to do something very important for me, and that was updating the firmware of a Samsung SSD. If you guys haven't seen my last video about me upgrading the SSD of my iMac, I highly recommend that you check it out to see what I'm talking about. In order for the Samsung Magician software to recognize and update the firmware of the drive, it had to be installed internally. Thankfully, this laptop has an M.2 slot that I was able to use to do just that. Without it, I might not have been able to do the upgrade for my iMac. So Lenovo for the win. I won't deny that there are times you may need a dedicated Windows machine, especially if you do the kind of work that I do. But that's why I'll continue to hold on to this machine, just in case of any of the off chances that I might really need it, or just as a backup laptop. Anyways, that'll be it for me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this one. Let me know in the comments if this video helped you in any way, and if you're going to start using your iPad as a daily driver instead of a laptop. Let me know for which field it is that you're using it for, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.